Hello, I am Ryan Heffelfinger, and this is my Chapter 14 presentation about conflict. Conflict is a process in which one party consistently interferes in the goal achievements of the efforts of another party. So, conflict can be seen as a positive thing or a negative thing. I feel like conflict is a positive thing because the only way to really solidify your beliefs on something and to really combat ideas is through conflict. And if you see conflict as a bad thing, then every conflict will seem to be a bad thing. There are three general sources of conflict: personal differences, structural differences, and communicational differences. Communication differences is a problem in the communication process. So maybe two people misunderstood something that another person was saying, and that starts a conflict. A structural difference is there are two types of structures. It's vertical and horizontal. A horizontal one is people along different departments, and a vertical one is relationships such as manager, employee, the hierarchy of a company. Sometimes the vertical can cause problems because of the hierarchy, I being lower than him, and departments can cause between two inner departments not working with each other well. Another one is personal differences. Some people just don't mix. That's just how life works. I don't get along with some people, and some people don't get along with me, and that may start conflict. There are 5 basic techniques to use to resolve conflict: avoidance, accommodation, forcing, compromise, and collaboration. Avoidance is intentionally keeping away from places, people, and such things that may start conflict. Accommodation is seeking others' needs before you seek your own needs. Forcing is to attempt one side over the other side. Compromise is where both parties give a little to take a little, and you meet them in the middle. And collaboration is also having the parties collaborate together to see what's the best way to go about the conflict. When a conflict arrives, stimulating the conflict is a great way to go about it. One of these ways is to use communication. If there is anything out there in the open, you need to be an open book about it. So you need to use communication, be honest, be brutal, be blunt towards the people conflicting of the facts and everything regarding to the conflict. Another reason is to bring out an outsider. Sometimes people get trapped in their bubble and they get in their way of thinking, and maybe bringing out someone that is totally removed from the argument at all can maybe make them see the light. Maybe there wasn't even a conflict to begin with. Another way is to play devil's advocate. Maybe to go in for one person, if they want something, say, well, why not think about this? Politicking is when someone influences or attempts to influence a whole organization's advantages and disadvantages. This is through culture, the unwritten norms of the members of the organization, or through status, them trying to receive a higher status or more important than someone else in the group. Although conflict can be a good thing, sometimes when someone's causing way too many conflicts and is very unreasonable, we go into the realm of discipline. This is correcting behavioral issues through a means of a whole system of very, very slight to very, very intense punishments. The first step along these things is a verbal warning. This is when a supervisor verbally lets it known about the behavioral issues and says, hey, please don't let it happen again. Then we go into a written warning. This is where we start getting a paper trail of the whole incidents. This written warning will be a whole written out memo of the behavioral issues, what they've done, and what they need to do to stop it immediately. After this, we have suspension. This is time without pay. This usually takes place after a verbal warning and a written warning, but maybe after multiple written warnings. Suspension is when we start getting to them being a very big problem. After suspension, if the problem keeps reoccurring and suspension didn't work, verbal warning and all this other means didn't work, we go into dismissal, which is firing them and removing them. Sometimes when someone starts a problem, it can be good because we can see other views from it and learn something out of it, but when someone causes so many problems, sometimes it's good to just nip it in the butt and fire them. So in the bigger picture, we have verbal warning, written warning, suspension, and discipline. All of these go in different levels of severity. Obviously, starting from one and going to the other. This is the system that we put in place. There are many different actions that need to be disciplined. Some of them are very, very serious. Some of them are very, very minor, but can turn into something serious. Something very minor is attendance. It's the most frequent disciplinary problems in all of the workplace, but uh, it can turn into a pretty big problem. If you don't punish it and stomp it out at the first or second attendance, and you might create a culture where attendance might not be mandatory, but people might think that it's not mandatory and they might miss something big. Another one is on the job behavior, such as insubordinance in the workplace or roughhousing. This is just not what we want to see at work. We want to keep on the job behavior at the best. We want to act professional in the workplace, and that also may be disciplined. Dishonesty is another big thing. If you can't trust your bosses, if you can't trust the people you work with, then there may be a little conflict arise from that. So dishonesty is another big thing that needs to be disciplined. And outside activities, such as like outside crimes committed, working with competitors, just stuff outside the workplace that could be harmful and it could come into the workplace. That also needs to be disciplined. Just like in any outside of the world discipline, there needs to be evidence and a paper trail of the misconduct. So if I give someone a verbal warning, I need to have someone at HR or whoever's handling the discipline write down that he was received a verbal warning, and that so there's documentation that he received a verbal warning, because if I fire someone and someone asks why did I fire them, there needs to be something there, a track record, a pattern. I can't just go out there and fire someone and not have a verbal warning unless it's very serious. This is where we fall into progressive discipline, which is pretty much reiterating that there has to be a system of first this, then that, then that, then that when it comes to discipline. It can't just be immediate. First, there has to be a verbal warning, and then there has to be a written warning, and then there has to be suspension, and then expulsion. The progressive discipline is also based on a sort of analogy called the hot stove rule. If you've ever heard the saying, or if a kid goes and touches a hot stove, they're going to immediately learn not to touch the hot stove because you will be burned. This also needs to be the same in discipline and workplace. So if someone messed up like something, you can't just keep a low key like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. It needs to be known and set in stone that that is not tolerable and not acceptable. So it needs to pretty much be like you are being burned by a hot stove. It needs to correct your actions. After discipline becomes negotiation. This is when two parties come together and make a joint decision. There are many types of negotiating. One is distributive bargaining, which is zero sum, and that means that one side has to take from the other side. There's no back and forth. One person can't win that isn't at the loss of someone else. Another one is integrative bargaining. My bad. This is when there's at least one win-win solution. So there's at least one side that benefits both. Here are some effective negotiation skills to keep in hand whenever you're negotiating with another person in your company. Consider the other party's situation. You don't want to come off as intolerable or ignorant to their situation. You want to put yourself in their shoes. So if you come to an argument or a negotiation without even considering what they're going through, they're not even going to listen to you. Have a concrete strategy. You want to come into the negotiation knowing what you want and how you want to do it. Begin with a positive outturn. You really want to start it off on a good note, because if you start off on a bad note, then the whole negotiation might go south. Emphasize win-win solutions. There's not many situations where both sides can't be happy whenever you leave. The whole purpose of a negotiation is to find a happy solution for both. So you might as well go in there looking for win-win solutions. Pay not that much attention to initial offers. The initial offers will be too one-sided, and normally it's just something in the middle that really comes out of it. Address problems, not personalities. Instead of saying, you're mean, say, you were acting mean. Don't address them personally, just address the situation. You guys aren't negotiating lifestyles. You guys aren't negotiating anything. You're negotiating a problem. So treat it as the problem. Don't negotiate the person. If you were to leave this presentation with anything or any notes, I would say overall, as a whole, conflict isn't always a bad thing. Continuous conflict or conflict on one thing that someone can't barge is a bad thing. But conflict is where the best ideas come from. conflict is where companies end up taking a turn and striving. Conflict really drives people, and if you look at it as a negative, then it will turn into a negative. But overall, conflict is good if handled right and if treated right. Thank you.